Hey there, brave souls. Thanks for joining me for this wild ride of a tale. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. It's the fuel that keeps these stories roaring to life. And while you're at it, drop a comment below and tell me where you're tuning in from. I'd love to know who's out there listening in the dark. Now, buckle up, because we're diving headfirst into a story that'll grip you tight and won't let go. This is about a day that started ordinary and ended in a nightmare I'll never shake, one that turned a city I adored into a battlefield of chaos in less than 12 hours. Let's get started. That morning, I was at the airfield, prepping for what I thought would be just another shift in the sky. My name's Ethan Carver, a pilot with the city's police aviation unit. I'd been flying choppers for years, routine patrols, the odd rescue mission, nothing too dramatic. The weather report promised clear skies, maybe a light breeze later, and I figured I'd be back home by evening, kicking back with a beer and some takeout. The helicopter, a sturdy Bell 206 we called Skywatch, sat gleaming under the dawn light as I ran through my pre-flight checklist. I'm a stickler for details. Every dial, every switch, every fuel line gets my full attention. You don't mess around when you're 1,000 feet up. That day, everything checked out. Gauges green, blades humming, all signs pointed to a quiet shift. Boy, was I wrong. The first hint of trouble crackled through my headset just as I finished tightening my harness. It was a garbled burst of static, followed by dispatcher Kelly's voice cutting in sharp and urgent. All units, we've got multiple 911 calls downtown. Reports of an unknown contagion, possible mass hysteria. Respond immediately. Her tone had an edge I'd never heard before, like she was reading a script she didn't believe herself. I flipped the startup switches, rotors whining to life, and lifted off, the airfield shrinking below me as I banked toward the city. My gut twisted a little. Mass hysteria? That wasn't our usual beat. But I shook it off, focusing on the familiar hum of the engine and the chatter buzzing over the radio. The closer I got to downtown, the worse it sounded. Ground units were yelling over each other, their voices jagged with panic. Subjects unresponsive, erratic behavior, attacking civilians. One officer barked. Another cut in. We've got crowds on 7th and Main, vehicles abandoned. Send backup now. I couldn't piece it all together yet, but the fear in their words was contagious. I nudged Skywatch higher, scanning the horizon. That's when I saw it. Thin tendrils of smoke curling up from the city's heart, like fingers reaching for the sky. The streets below were a mess, cars gridlocked, some with doors flung open, others smashed into each other. It looked like a disaster movie set, but this was real, unfolding right under my nose. I switched channels, hunting for clearer orders. The primary frequency was a chaotic mess, overlapping shouts, pleas for help, static swallowing half the words. Then a ground officer broke through. Unit 5 to air support, this is Sergeant Ruiz. You copy? We need extraction at Lincoln and 9th, multiple casualties, hostiles everywhere. His voice trembled but held steady. I keyed the mic, keeping my own tone level. This is Carver, air support. I'm inbound. Give me a landing spot. He came back fast. Rooftop on the old bank building flat, should hold you. Hurry, man. We're losing ground. I swung Skywatch toward the coordinates, the cityscape tilting beneath me. Downtown was a war zone now. People darted between stalled cars, some waving for help, others just running blind. Building lights flickered like the power grid was coughing its last breath. Smoke thickened the air, stinging my eyes even from altitude. I spotted the bank, a squat, 10-story relic with a wide roof, and started my descent. The spotlight cut through the haze, catching a huddle of survivors waving frantically. Some had rags tied around wounds, others clutched each other, faces pale and streaked with dirt. I set the chopper down hard, skid screeching against concrete, and popped the door. They didn't rush me at first, just stared, like they couldn't believe rescue was real. I waved them over. Come on, move it. Line up, we're getting out. That snapped them out of it. But then I heard it crashing, splintering sounds from the rooftop access door. Something heavy slammed against it, followed by guttural screams that didn't sound human. The survivors bolted toward me, panic overtaking hesitation. They're breaking through. One yelled, a guy in a torn security uniform. I glanced at the door, barricaded with crates and pipes, and saw it buckle. My heart pounded. Skywatch could only take so many. Overloading meant crashing. I barked orders. Injured first, quick. We've got limits. A woman with a bloody leg limped aboard, helped by a teenage kid. A man with a gash across his chest stumbled in next, wheezing. 8 squeezed into seats meant for 6, and I waved off the rest. I'll come back. I swear, just hold that door. Their eyes, wide, pleading, burned into me as I lifted off. The barricade gave way just as we cleared the roof. Figures poured out, moving wrong, jerky, wild, like puppets with cut strings. They crashed into each other, arms swinging, mouths open in silent howls. That wasn't a riot. That was something else entirely. In the air, I tried to steady my breathing, glancing back at my passengers. The woman with the leg wound clutched a soaked towel to it, her face gray. The kid whispered to her, voice shaking, she got bit down there. Those things that he cut off, swallowing hard. A chill ran through the cabin. Bit? I asked, keeping my eyes on the controls. No one answered, but the tension thickened. I radioed command. Carver here, extracted 8 from Lincoln and 9th. Where's the drop point? The reply came weak, crackling. Hospitals are swamped, quarantine zones popping up. Try Mercy Clinic, they've got a pad. I adjusted course, but another pilot broke in. Mercy's gone dark, overrun. I saw it from above. Smoke's everywhere. My stomach dropped. Smoke plumes dotted the skyline now, gunfire popping in the distance. The city was unraveling faster than I could fly. One passenger, a middle-aged woman with a death grip on her seat, kept muttering, "My husband's out there." I called. No answer. Her voice faded into the rotor noise. Another guy, a burly type in a rent-a-cop vest, just stared out the window, jaw tight. No one had a plan. Neither did I. Mercy Clinic still had flares glowing on its roof when I found it, a small outpost in the chaos. Medics in masks rushed out as I landed, pulling survivors off with practiced urgency. The woman with the bite mark staggered out last, leaning on a nurse. Her eyes were vacant, like she'd already checked out. I caught a medic's glance, grim, knowing, and felt a knot tighten in my chest. "We've got more out there," I told them, voice hoarse. "Need fuel to keep going." They pointed me to a jerry can near the pad, barely enough for one more run. I refueled quick, the smell of gasoline cutting through the smoke, and climbed back in. The radio crackled with new quartz, a high-rise by the river, survivors signaling with sheets. As I lifted off, the clinic staff waved me away, their silhouettes shrinking against the flares. The city sprawled beneath me, a tapestry of fire and shadow. That high-rise loomed ahead, a gray monolith with white fabric flapping on its roof, big letters scrawled, "Help US." I circled, scoping the landing zone. Debris littered the edge, chairs, a busted AC unit, but a clear patch beckoned. Survivors swarmed into view as I hovered, at least a dozen, maybe more. A woman held a kid tight, her face streaked with tears. Others waved, shouting over the wind. My gut sank. Skywatch couldn't take them all, not in one go. I touched down, blades kicking up dust, and slid the door open. "We've got room for half, kids and injured first," I yelled. They hesitated, then surged forward. An older guy with a limp ushered a girl with a bandaged arm aboard. A mom shoved her toddler into my arms, sobbing, "Take her, please." I nodded, strapping the kid in. 7 piled on too many already, but the rest begged me to stay. "We'll die up here," a man shouted, pointing to the stairwell. "They're coming, doors won't hold." I scanned their faces, hating myself. "I'll be back," I promised, voice cracking. "Barricade that stairwell, hold on." The chopper groaned as I pulled up, heavier than it should have been. Below, the leftover survivors scrambled to pile junk against the door. I banked toward the stadium, a makeshift evac hub, it said. The toddler wailed in her seat, tiny fist clenched. The older guy muttered, "They tried the fire escape, didn't make it." His words hung there, heavy as the smoke outside. I gripped the stick tighter, praying the fuel held. The city burned beneath us, and I knew this was just the beginning. The stadium loomed ahead as I coaxed Skywatch through thickening smoke, its floodlights cutting hazy beams into the dusk. That toddler's cries pierced the cabin, a sound that clawed at my focus, but I kept my hands steady on the controls. The fuel gauge flickered, barely a whisper of gas left after that heavy load from the riverfront high-rise. 7 souls crammed in behind me, their breaths ragged, their silence louder than the rotors. The older guy with the limp, Hank, he'd said, finally spoke, voice low. Those things, they got the others who went downstairs. Didn't even scream. I didn't respond. Couldn't. My eyes were locked on the stadium's makeshift landing zone, marked by volunteers in neon vests waving flashlights. I brought Skywatch down fast, too fast, skids scraping asphalt, but we settled intact. The door flew open before I could unbuckle, and security swarmed us, barking orders. Out now? Move to tree it. The mom grabbed her toddler, tears carving tracks through the grime on her face, and stumbled off with the rest. I climbed out after them, legs shaky, and caught a glimpse of the stadium's chaos. Tents sprawling across the field, medics darting between stretchers, sirens wailing over a megaphone's garbled instructions. An official in a rumpled suit jogged over, clipboard clutched like a shield. Carver, right? Status, where'd you come from? Riverfront high-rise, I said, wiping sweat off my brow. Got 7 out. More still up there. Promised I'd go back. City's a mess. Fires, abandoned cars, those things everywhere. His face tightened, eyes flicking to the horizon where smoke painted the sky black. National Guards mobilizing, but they're stuck outside the limits. Infected are clogging the highways. We're holding here, but fuel's thin, depots almost dry. I glanced at Skywatch. That jerry can from the clinic had barely gotten me here. Give me what you've got, I said. People are trapped out there. He nodded grimly and waved over a kid with a fuel hose. Enough for one more run, maybe. While they topped off the tank, I scanned the stadium. Survivors shuffled in lines, some clutching bags, others blank-faced, like they'd left their souls behind. Gunshots popped in the distance, sharp, sporadic. The official muttered, "We've got reports of hordes moving toward the bridges." If they cut us off, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. I climbed back into the cockpit, the promise I'd made to those rooftop folks gnawing at me. The high-rise wasn't far, but time was a luxury we didn't have. Dispatch crackled through my headset. Carver, group on the waterfront apartments. Big signal, sheets on the roof. Ground units can't reach him. You're their shot. I lifted off, the stadium shrinking below, its lights swallowed by the haze. The waterfront wasn't a long haul, but every mile felt like a gauntlet. Flames licked up from lower floors of buildings now, glass shattering in the heat. The radio buzzed with fragments. Families trapped, units overrun, pleas fading into static. I spotted the apartment tower, its roof draped with white fabric spelling "Save US" in sloppy red paint. Figures waved, tiny against the sprawl, and I circled for a landing spot. The roof was a junkyard. Overturned tables, soggy cardboard, but a corner looked solid. I eased Skywatch down, rotors kicking up ash, and slid the door open. 15 people rushed me, maybe more, adults, kids, a mix of terror and hope on their faces. A woman clutched a little boy, his eyes huge. "You're back," she shouted, mistaking me for someone else. I didn't correct her. Kids first, then wounded. I yelled over the engine. "We can't all go too heavy." They froze, then scrambled. A guy with a cut-up arm shoved a girl with a twisted ankle forward. The woman handed me her kid, trembling. "Please, just him if there's no room." 9 piled in. Overcapacity already, and the rest backed off, faces crumpling. "I'll return," I said, throat tight. "Block that door. Hold out." One of them, a wiry guy in a hoodie, yelled back. "They're already at the stairs. Furniture's all we've got." I nodded, slamming the door shut. The chopper strained as I pulled up, dashboard lights flashing warnings. Below, The leftovers hauled debris to the stairwell, their shadows frantic. The little boy whimpered, curled against his mom's chest. I banked toward the stadium again, fuel needle dipping into red. The city was a furnace now, smoke so thick I could taste it, gunfire echoing like a broken rhythm. Halfway there, the radio spat a new voice. Stadiums locking down, breach in the evac lines. Divert if you can. My heart sank. A breach? I pictured those tents, those lines, hundreds of people. Where else? I snapped into the mic. Static answered. The passengers shifted behind me, sensing the shift. What's that mean? The guy with the cut arm asked, voice sharp. Means we're improvising, I said, scanning the skyline. Mercy Clinic was out. The stadium was compromised. I spotted a flicker, flares on a smaller rooftop, a medical outpost maybe. No choice. I swung toward it, praying they could take us. The landing was rough, skids skittering on gravel, but medics raced out, masks up, hands gloved. They yanked the door open, pulling survivors off fast. The mom clung to her boy, whispering thanks as they hustled her away. I stayed in the seat, catching my breath. A medic banged on the glass. You staying? I shook my head. More out there. Fuel. He pointed to a crate, another half can. I refueled quick, hands shaking, and checked the radio. Dispatch was a mess. Waterfront. Roof. Still holding. I knew where that was. Those folks I'd left, they were counting on me. Back in the air, the city's glow had turned hellish, orange streaks against black. The waterfront tower came into view, smoke curling from its base now. Flames danced in windows below the roof, licking higher. I hovered, spotlight sweeping. At first, nothing, then movement. Survivors burst from the stairwell, fewer than before, waving a flashlight. I sat down hard. Door opened before the skid settled. Go, go, I shouted. 8 ran up. Hoodie guy among them, blood on his sleeve. Lost 3, he panted. They went to check downstairs, didn't come back. I waved them in, counting heads. The little boy's mom wasn't there. Safe at the stadium, I hoped. Anyone bit? I asked, voice hard. They shook their heads, but their eyes darted. I didn't push. Time was bleeding out. The building groaned, a deep rumble from below, and I lifted off just as fire surged through a shattered window. The roof held, but barely. We cleared it by inches, heat searing the air. The chopper wobbled, too much weight, too little fuel, but I held it steady, aiming for the stadium despite the lockdown warning. No one spoke at first, the cabin thick with dread. Then a woman near the back moaned, clutching her side. She's hurt, hoodie guy said, leaning over. She pulled her hand away, wet, red, a ragged tear in her shirt. Not a bite, she rasped. Glass fell through a door. I wanted to believe her, but that knot in my gut tightened. The radio buzzed. Carver, stadium's hot, infected inside. Find another LZ. I cursed under my breath. The flares from that outpost were my only bet, but fuel was a ghost now. Minutes left, tops. Suddenly, the woman spasmed, a choked gurgle escaping her throat. The others recoiled, pressing against the walls. She's turning, a guy yelled, fumbling for the door latch. No, she's not, hoodie guy snapped, grabbing her shoulders. Her eyes rolled back, body jerking, then stilled. Silence, then a growl, low and wrong. She lunged, teeth snapping at hoodie guy's arm. Screams erupted, the chopper tilting as they wrestled her. Hold her, I barked, fighting the stick. The stadium loomed close, but this was a powder keg now. One wrong move, and we'd crash. Open the door, someone shrieked. Not over the city. I shot back, banking hard. She thrashed, clawing, until 3 pinned her down, barely. My hands shook, land fast, or lose it all. The stadium's edge gleamed ahead, a corner lot marked off. I radioed. Emergency inbound. Hostile on board. Ground control yelled back. Far west pad. Security's ready. I dropped altitude. Too steep, too fast, but the skids hit solid. The door ripped open. armed guards storming in, dragging the woman out as she howled. The rest spilled after, shaking, and I slumped in the seat, pulse hammering. An officer ran up, face grim. "We're losing this place," hordes inside. "You're out of fuel, Carver. Stay or go." I looked at Skywatch, empty tank, battered frame. Then at the city, a sea of flames and shadows. "I'm not done," I said, voice raw. "People are still out there." He nodded, tossing me a flare. "Guards got a fuel drop coming, maybe. Good luck." I gripped the flare, the weight of that promise dragging me back to the sky. The stadium buzzed like a kicked hive as I climbed out of Skywatch, legs wobbly from that near-crash landing. Security hauled the thrashing woman away, her growls fading into the chaos of sirens and shouts. The survivors I brought scattered toward triage tents, their faces a mix of relief and dread. I leaned against the chopper, flare still clenched in my fist, the officer's words echoing. "Fuel drops coming. Maybe." Maybe wasn't enough, not with rooftops still flashing SOS signals across the city. Smoke hung heavy, a bitter tang coating my throat, and the skyline glowed like a furnace. I wasn't done flying, not while people were trapped out there. A medic jogged over, mask crooked, eyes wild. "You, Carver? Heard you pulled a dozen out today. Crazy stuff." I nodded, wiping grime off my face. "More still needed." "What's the fuel situation?" He grimaced. "Depots tapped. Guards supposed to airdrop some, but comms are spotty. And we've got trouble, bites in the evac lines. Lockdown's failing." I glanced past him. The stadium's field was a madhouse. Volunteers waving folks into tents, soldiers clutching rifles, a megaphone blaring. "Stay calm. Proceed in order." Calm was long gone. Gunshots cracked closer now, inside the perimeter. I ducked toward the comms tent, dodging a stretcher carried by two panting medics. Inside, a cluster of officials hunched over radios, static spitting from every set. One, a stocky guy with a buzz cut, spotted me. "Pilot, right? We're stretched thin. Guards bogged down 10 miles out, hordes on the highways. You've got a bird, can you scout?" I shook my head. "Out of juice. Gimme fuel. I'll do more than scout. I'll pull people out." He frowned, then tossed me a handheld radio. "Channel 9, listen for the drop. If it comes, you're first in line. We're losing this place fast." Back at Skywatch, I checked the tank, dry as a bone. The stadium's lights flickered, casting long shadows over the crowd. A scream cut through the noise, sharp and close, followed by a ripple of panic. I spun toward it. Near the east gate, a knot of people bolted from a tent, chased by staggering figures. Jerky, wild, infected. Guards opened fire, muzzle flashes popping like firecrackers, but the things kept coming. "Breach," someone yelled, and the crowd surged, knocking over barriers. I gripped the radio, praying for that drop, but Channel 9 was a mess. Fuel inbound, delayed, hold position. No holding here. I sprinted to the chopper, adrenaline buzzing. If the drop didn't come, I'd figure something out. Steal a can, siphon a truck, anything. A kid in a reflective vest stumbled past, hauling a crate. "Fuel," I barked. He shook his head, breathless. "Medical, last of it." I cursed, scanning the lot. Then, overhead, a drone of engines, faint but growing. A guard chopper broke through the smoke, a sling of fuel cans dangling beneath. Relief hit me like a punch, but it was short-lived. Gunfire erupted near the tents again, louder, closer. The infected were inside, and the stadium was a trap now. The guard bird hovered, dropping its load near the west pad. 3 cans, maybe 4. I bolted for it, weaving through chaos. Survivors ran blind, some clutching kids, others swinging bats at shadows. An infected lunged from my left, pale, eyes blank, teeth bared. I swung the flare, cracking its skull, and kept moving. The cans hit dirt as I reached them, one splitting open, gas pooling uselessly. I grabbed 2 intact ones, enough for a short run, and hauled them to Skywatch. Hands shaking, I poured fuel into the tank, splashing half of it on myself. The rotor whined to life just as a wave of screams rolled from the field. I climbed in, slamming the door. The radio crackled. Carver, hotel near the industrial zone. Guests and staff, rooftop signal. No ground access. Go. I yanked the stick, lifting off as infected swarmed the pad below, clawing at the air. The stadium shrank, a flickering island in a sea of fire. The industrial zone wasn't far, but the city was a graveyard now. Streets choked with wrecks, buildings ablaze. I spotted the hotel, a blocky silhouette with a wide rooftop terrace. Flares glowed, and a huddle of figures waved. 10, maybe 12. Smoke billowed from nearby towers, ash swirling like snow. I eased Skywatch down, skids kissing concrete. The group ran up, hotel staff in uniforms, guests in rumpled suits, all worn thin. Thank God, a woman in a blazer shouted, clutching a briefcase. Kids first, then injured. I called, popping the door. A bellhop dragged a guy with a busted leg forward. A woman shoved a teenage girl in next. 9 crammed aboard. Weight pushing limits, but 3 stayed back, faces grim. We'll hold, a guy in a chef's coat said, hefting a fire axe. They're at the stairs, go. I nodded, hating it, and pulled up. The stairwell door shuddered as we cleared the roof. Crashing, splintering. Airborne, the cabin was a pressure cooker. The guy with the busted leg groaned, blood soaking his pant leg. Not bit, he rasped, catching my glance. Fell debris. The woman with the briefcase gripped it like a lifeline, muttering, "Everything's in here. My whole life." I tuned her out, scanning for a drop point. The stadium was a no-go, radio chatter confirmed it. Overrun, evac aborted. The clinic was too far. I banked toward a high school on the outskirts, an athletic field, maybe a chance. Fuel was low, but it'd get us there. Maybe. Then it happened, fast, ugly. The teenage girl convulsed, a wet choke gurgling from her throat. She's hit, the bellhop yelled, grabbing her. Her eyes rolled white, body thrashing. No bite. She was fine, the woman shrieked, but the girl's growl said otherwise. She lunged, teeth snapping at the bellhop's arm. He shoved her back, and the cabin erupted, screams, flailing limbs. Hold her down, I barked, fighting the stick as the chopper pitched. They pinned her, barely, her snarls filling the air. Door, someone yelled. Not yet, I snapped. We were over downtown. Dropping her meant chaos below. The field came into view. Dark, quiet, a gamble. I dropped altitude, rotor noise drowning the struggle. She's not breathing, the bellhop shouted, then cursed as she snapped again, wilder. 3 held her, arms straining. I aimed for the grass, skids brushing treetops, and touched down hard. The door flew open, and they shoved her out, still thrashing, onto the turf. Stay in, I yelled as the others stumbled after, checking the perimeter. The girl staggered up, growling, then collapsed. Silence, save for the engine's hum. I climbed out, knees weak, and scanned the field. Empty cars lined the school's lot, windows smashed. No infected, yet. The group huddled close, breathless. We can't stay, the bellhop said, wiping blood off his hands. Not his, hers. She hid it, bite under her sleeve. I nodded, gut twisting. School's got doors, maybe supplies. We moved fast. They grabbed what they could. Axe, a flashlight. And we crept toward a side entrance, ajar and dark. Inside, the halls were a ghost town. Lockers open, papers scattered, a mural of smiling kids mocking the silence. We split up. Bellhop and blazer woman checked a lounge. Busted leg guy, and I hit the cafeteria. Generators on. I muttered, noting the flickering lights. Could hold here. He grunted, limping behind. Then, yells from the lounge. I ran, finding the bellhop wrestling a guy from our group. Pale, sweating, eyes wrong. He's turning, blazer woman shrieked, clutching a chair. Bit hit it. The guy snarled, Lunging, I tackled him, pinning him with the bellhop's help, but he'd already nicked Blazer Woman's arm, red blooming through her sleeve. Storage room, I barked, dragging him down the hall. We locked him in, pounding echoing behind the door. Blazer Woman stared at her arm, trembling. "It's nothing," she whispered, but we all knew better. "Quarantine her too," the bellhop said, voice flat. She protested, but we had no choice. Into the room she went, sobbing. The rest of us barricaded the hall with desks, hearts pounding. Then, banging outside now. Infected at the doors, drawn by our noise. "They're here," Busted Leg Guy rasped, gripping a table leg. The school creaked, lights dimming. Fuel and Skywatch was a trickle, barely a hop left. "Field or fight?" I asked, voice hoarse. Half wanted to run, me included, half wanted to hold. "Farm roads past the fence," the bellhop said. "Maybe a truck." I nodded. "We go for it, now." A crash split the air, front doors buckling. "Too late," someone yelled. Infected poured in, shadows stretching down the hall. We bolted for the chopper, a tight pack, their moans chasing us. The field was alive now, stumbling figures closing in. We sprinted, piling into Skywatch. "Go!" the bellhop shouted as one grabbed the skid. I yanked the stick, lifting off, the thing dangling, then falling, into the swarm. Fuel lights screamed, but we cleared the school, city shrinking below. "Where?" Busted Leg Guy gasped. "Anywhere but here," I said, spotting a dark patch. "Fields, maybe salvation." The engine sputtered, a death rattle, and I knew we were on borrowed time. The chopper's engine coughed as we cleared the high school, a stuttering growl that matched the pounding in my chest. Skywatch wobbled, too heavy, too empty, fuel lights flashing red like a death sentence. Below, the athletic field crawled with infected, their jerky silhouettes lurching toward the sky, arms clawing at nothing. The survivors behind me clung to their seats, bellhop, Busted Leg Guy, a couple others, silent except for the ragged edge of their breathing. I gripped the stick, eyes darting for that dark patch I'd glimpsed. Fields, maybe a road, a slim chance to land and live. "Hang on," I muttered, more to myself than them. "We're not done yet." The city skyline receded, a jagged line of flames and smoke swallowing everything I'd known. Roads snaked out like veins, clogged with wrecks. Cars abandoned mid-flight, some still smoldering. The radio was dead now, just a hiss of static, no voices left to guide us. I banked toward the outskirts, the engine's whine pitching higher, warning lights screaming. "Where we going?" the bellhop rasped, leaning forward. His hands were still stained with that girl's blood from the school. "Farmland," I said, voice tight. "Field by a service station, best shot we've got." He nodded, grim, and slumped back. The chopper shuddered, losing altitude fast. I wrestled the controls, coaxing every last drop from the tank. Ahead, the dark patch sharpened, a parking lot next to a rundown gas joint, pumps dry, windows smashed. No infected in sight, but that didn't mean much. "Brace," I barked as the engine sputtered out completely. Skywatch dropped, a sickening lurch, and I yanked the stick to glide us in. The lot rushed up, too fast, and we hit hard, skids screeching across asphalt. The rotor clipped a rusted sign, showering sparks, and we slid, grinding to a stop against a dumpster. Silence, then groans as we unbuckled, dazed but breathing. I kicked the door open, stumbling out into air thick with ash. The others followed, bellhop clutching his axe, Busted Leg Guy limping bad now, the rest scanning the gloom. The service station loomed, a squat shadow against the flickering horizon. Inside, a woman asked, voice trembling. She'd been quiet till now, clutching a flashlight. "Maybe," I said, ears straining. Then it came, moans, faint but growing, echoing from the dark. The crash had rung the dinner bell. "Move," I snapped, waving them toward the building. We shuffled fast, the bellhop half carrying Busted Leg Guy, flashlight beam bouncing off cracked pavement. The station's door hung loose, glass shattered. We slipped inside, stepping over scattered cans and a toppled register. The air stank of stale oil and something sour. Decay, maybe. Barricaded, I said, grabbing a shelf. The bellhop and flashlight woman dragged a counter over, piling chairs and a busted cooler on top. Busted leg guy sank against a wall, clutching his thigh, face gray. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, weak. "Just tired." I didn't buy it. His leg looked worse, blood seeping through, but no time to check. The moans outside swelled, shadows shifting beyond the windows. "Weapons," the bellhop said, hefting his axe. Flashlight woman found a tire iron under a counter. I grabbed a jagged metal rod from a broken rack. The last guy, quiet, wiry, picked up a hammer, hands shaking. "They're close," he whispered, peering through a crack in the boarded-up window. Shapes staggered into the lot. 5, 10, more, drawn by the chopper's wreckage. They moved wrong, all jerks and stumbles, eyes glinting in the dark. "Hold tight," I said, voice low. "We've got walls, for now." The barricade rattled as one slammed against it, a hollow thud that made us flinch. Busted leg guy coughed, wet and rough, drawing eyes. "I'm fine," he rasped, but his skin was clammy, eyes glassy. "He's not," flashlight woman hissed, stepping back. "He's bit, look at him." I froze. His pant leg was torn higher now, a ragged gash beneath, teeth marks, not debris. "When?" I demanded. He shook his head, slow. "School, didn't want to say. Thought I'd make it." The bellhop cursed, axe raised. "He'll turn, we've seen it." The guy pleaded. "No, I'm okay, just need rest." But his voice cracked, a gurgle creeping in. The barricade buckled again, louder, more infected piling on. "We can't fight both," I said, gut twisting. "Storage, now." We dragged him to a back room, a cramped box with a steel door. He didn't resist, just slumped as we locked him in. "Water," he croaked through the crack. I slid a bottle under, hating myself. "We'll check on you." I lied. His coughs faded into moans. Too fast, too familiar. Outside, the front door splintered, glass crunching under boots, or worse. "They're in," wiry guy yelled, hammer trembling. We bolted to the main room, piling more junk, shelves, a fridge against the breach. The infected clawed through, arms flailing, faces blank but hungry. Flashlight woman swung her tire iron, cracking a skull, but another took its place. The bellhop hacked with his axe, grunting, "Too many." I jabbed my rod, piercing one through the chest. It didn't flinch, just kept coming. "Back door," I shouted, spotting an exit sign. We retreated, shoving a vending machine to slow them, and spilled into an alley. Dark, narrow, a faint glow of fields beyond. The moans followed, relentless. We sprinted, busted leg guy's absence a silent weight. The alley opened to a dirt road, farmland stretching into shadow. "Truck," flashlight woman gasped, pointing. A pickup, keys dangling in the ignition, abandoned mid-escape. I jumped in, turning the key. Nothing. "Dead," I growled, popping the hood. The bellhop peeked over. Batteries shot, cables loose. Infected spilled from the alley, closing fast. "Fix it," wiry guy shrieked, hammer swinging wild as one lunged. I fumbled with the cables, hands slick, while flashlight woman bashed another back. A click, engine sputtered, then roared. "In," I yelled, slamming the hood. They piled in, bellhop shotgun, others in the bed, tires spinning as I floored it. Infected clawed the tailgate, one grabbing wiry guy's leg. He screamed, kicking, hammer flailing, till the bellhop yanked him free. We peeled onto the road, their moans fading, fields blurring past. "Where?" Flashlight woman panted, clutching her iron. "Away," I said, eyes on the dark. The tank was half full, enough to run, not enough to plan. The road stretched, empty but for wrecks dotting the edges. Cars, a tractor, all silent. The city's glow dimmed behind us, a dying ember. Safe zone? Wiry guy asked, voice small. Herd guard was setting up outside. The bellhop said, uncertain. I nodded, gripping the wheel. If it's there, we'll find it. Silence settled, heavy with what we'd lost. Skywatch, the school, busted leg guy, everyone left behind. Flashlight woman stared out. Light off now, her face a mask of exhaustion. Then, movement ahead. Shapes in the road, staggering, too many. No, I breathed, slowing. They turned, eyes catching headlights. Dozens, a wall of infected blocking the way. Reverse, the bellhop shouted, but behind us, more emerged from the fields, drawn by the engine. Trapped, wiry guy whimpered, hammer slipping. I floored it, aiming to plow through, but the truck jolted, something under the wheels, maybe a body, and stalled. Out, I yelled, kicking the door open. We spilled into the dirt, weapons up, surrounded. They closed in, slow, unstoppable, a tide of hunger. The bellhop swung his axe, flashlight woman her iron, wiry guy flailing till his hammer dropped. I stabbed with my rod, each hit buying seconds, but the circle tightened. Back to back, I roared, and we formed a knot, breaths sinking in desperate rhythm. Their hands grabbed, cold, strong, tearing at us. Flashlight woman screamed, dragged down, her light rolling free. Wiry guy went next, a choked cry cut short. The bellhop fought, axe stuck in a skull, till they swarmed him too. I swung, alone now, rod slick with blood. Faces loomed, blank, feral, endless. My arms burned, legs buckled, and I knew it. No rescue, no miracle. The city fell in hours, and I'd flown through it all, pulling souls from rooftops, racing the collapse. But this road, this night, it was the end. A hand seized my shoulder, teeth grazed my arm, and darkness rushed in. My last thought wasn't fear, just a flicker of the sky. Empty now, no choppers left to save us. That's it, folks, the end of Ethan Carver's fight. A pilot who defied the odds till they crushed him. If this tale rattled you, like and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Where do you listen from? Tell me below. I'll see you in the next one. Stay vigilant out there. And remember, sometimes the sky's your only friend until it's not. Catch you next time.